Hello, everyone, and welcome to the WREVA Electrifying News August 2024 edition. With me, as always, I have our co-hosts. We have Mr. Eric Stevens joining us from the Listowel area. How are you today, sir?
It's my first day back from vacation, so I wish I was still on vacation.
So it's a rough day for Eric. Okay,
Yeah,
understood.
yeah.
Understood.
Yeah.
Also with us as normal, we have Mr. Ian Graham joining us from downtown Kitchener. How are you today, sir?
Hanging in, same like Eric, came back from up north and right back at it, working in the studio and doing this podcast and have a session right after, and finished up teaching at the college to have a couple of weeks off to go back to teach at the college. Like, oh yeah, lots of fun.
Yeah, lots of fun lined up as we wrap up the summer. But I hope everyone's been enjoying the weather because it's been pretty fantastic. Certainly wonderful EV weather for long ranges, and it's been enjoyable certainly for the last few weeks. So we look forward with a few more good weeks as well as summer continues. But Ian's got the deck ready to go. Let's get rolling with the electrifying news.
All right. Let's just get this up for Sharon. Okay, so the first off in our electrifying news for August 2024 is Canada. Well, we're pouring lots of money into EV industry. But this is an opinion piece from the Toronto Star, but are we unwilling to protect it? So
exactly. So we've talked on this podcast many times about the leaps and bounds Canada, as well as the province of Ontario, has been performing when it comes to EVs, getting the structure in place to build EVs, to source materials, to put battery packs together, to sell them to the automotive industry, and allow Ontario to be part of that entire superstructure of building these cars. And I think I speak for all of us that we've been pretty impressed with what Ontario, Canada has done over the past couple of years, how we've meshed in with the IRA in the United States, how we're benefiting from that arrangement, how we're being able to get businesses, start them to get up to scale, to produce some of these materials, these batteries, these packs, and of course, all the announcements of other manufacturers building in Ontario, supplying jobs and producing new factories that are going to be built. Many we've heard, in fact, to the tune of somewhere in the area of over $50 billion the government has invested in this based on the tax relief they're giving to companies. As these companies expand, it's not just a gift. They have to actually perform in order to get these tax exemptions. But we have been seeing, of course, lately that there are some manufacturers that are not set up in Ontario or Canada or the United States, for that matter, that are possibly going to be importing vehicles into our market, which is completely legal under the framework that we have in the system currently. What is concerning is that someone like a BYD, for example, what pictured here, is that they certainly could import them, but of course they're not being built here or in North America or part of any free trade country that we're connected with. They would be built in China and shipped here, and they would still qualify for the EV tax credits that are available in Ontario, in Canada. I'm sorry, not in Ontario, in other provinces. But this is something that we have to be aware of. I'm not sure which way we're going to go with this, but I'm certainly hope that we can protect the infrastructure that we already built for battery electric vehicles. And I'm hoping that we can come to some sort of a middle ground that all can benefit from this. And this has kind of been a lot of talk lately with the European Union putting out tariffs, the United States threatening tariffs, and of course the Canadian government is now being asked to follow the United States lead. So this is something that is newsworthy. It's happening now, and it's something that is going to be developing over the next weeks and months.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is obviously a tricky subject and stuff like that, and I think the story is going to tie into a few other stories we have tonight as well too, about applying tariffs to competing industry versus supporting the industry as well too,
Right.
and how we subsidize our industry internally as well, and then even looking at different approaches as well. So we have another story on how the European Union has structured their tariff scheme versus the U.S. The U.S. has just kind of put a blanket 50% tariff on everything, versus the European Union, which has kind of done a calculation for different companies. So they've actually targeted different companies and said, based on the subsidy that we think you've received, we're going to apply different tariff levels. So it'd be interesting to see how that balance plays out and stuff like that. But I'm kind of the blanket approach from the U.S. has a lot of potential repercussions to it, but we shall see. So,
Mhm. This really is a quite the hot potato, because it becomes not just about electric vehicles anymore. There's so much with the politics about all of this, and it, of course, today we have the railway shut down as well, which also is affecting not just Canada, but also the exports to China and US, everything this way. So with the billions that Canada's put into this and then trying to protect, the Canadian industry, it's also becoming more difficult because here we go. We've talked about when's that $25,000 car coming out. And I mean, how many people know Dongfeng Motor? I just happened to come across this, and they just launched, $25,000 as one of Europe's cheapest electric cars. And of course, Europe just, we're going to be talking about this as well with their own aspect.
Oh, I think Ian locked up a little bit.
yep.
And hopefully he'll come back. But yeah, it is something that is a bit of a hot potato. And oh, there Ian's back. Are you back, Ian? Ian, are you with us?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Let's switch to the next. You froze up a little bit, but we got the gist of it, so we can go to the next slide.
Yeah, the gist of it. All right, sounds good. Okay, so speaking of the tariffs, now we have the Tesla BYD benefit with the European Union are doing cuts, and Tesla really received quite a big cut with a lot of this type of stuff as well. But I'm also hearing rumblings that some of the Chinese companies are not very happy about this, and that just sort of came out today as well. But it's interesting what Tesla got a cut quite a bit, and then you look at BYD, one of the other major big manufacturers, and they're only 17.4% to 17%. So it's again hot potato that we're dealing with all this type of stuff.
Yeah, I think Tesla was actually working with the European Union regulators. They were asking for some specifics about manufacturing in Shanghai and where the parts were coming from, and they wanted a bunch of paperwork signed up as to the details. And they dropped almost 20% of their tariff down to 9%. So yeah, they got the lowest rate apparently. So that was kind of a shock, but you could definitely see why Tesla was working with the European Union if they could muster that almost 20% drop in tariff.
Yeah, exactly.
And here it looks like it based on this, the European Union has created a tariff rate based on what they think the subsidy is for the individual company. So they've gone through on an individual company basis and said, hey, we think these companies have received a certain amount of subsidy. And now they've kind of gone through and done this calculation. It looks like Tesla's gone through and done went back to the European Union and said, hey, here's our evidence and our math to show that, hey, this is how much, based on the calculation, how much our tariff should actually be. So.
Mm. So, anyways, again, it's interesting times with what direction does Canada go, US goes, Europe goes, especially when China has put so much money into their own EV aspect of things, and they also now are over 50% electric vehicles for the sales, from what I understand as well.
Yep.
So yeah, so all these things are big impacts on this part of it. So
Absolutely.
all right. So let's go back to Canada here. And Eric, tell us a little bit about this. This is interesting. I like this roadmap that this company's put together. It's, it's a good outline.
Yeah, so this is basically talking about a battery innovation roadmap, basically. So one of the issues is, Canada is making a lot of investments into the EV infrastructure, into different things like that. But the problem is a lot of businesses, and there's been a lot of startups and a lot of companies that have invested into this stuff, and they're having trouble getting to the different phases. It's one thing to start a company up. It's another thing to scale it and make it successful and to bring it into operation and stuff like that. And that's something that's been a challenge, especially in Canada, for many different businesses. So what's happening now is the Accelerate ZEV Alliance has come back and said, hey, we need to, invest some money, $3 billion in battery innovation through public and private funding, and then invest in training, making sure we have the right skilled people as well too to do this, and to make sure that the intellectual property is in place as well too, to make sure that all these pieces are in place that properly scale these businesses and give them the support they need in order to get these businesses from the small scale to the large scale and get them to where they need to be to do this. So this is kind of the flip side of the coin of versus tariffing the competition versus supporting in-house and making sure that our internal businesses actually get to the scale that we need to make them competitive on the international stage.
Yeah, this makes complete sense. It's almost like the Communitech of the EV industry. They're trying to band together. They're trying to support the ones that are up and comings. They're trying to educate them as to what the next steps are to be successful. And they're looking at, of course, successful companies that have already done part of this and sharing that knowledge so that different parts of the businesses can get up and running and up to scale. And this is critical because you don't want a bunch of startups that can't make that next leap into mass production or to become even more successful. They have to scale properly, and this is ideal. We definitely need this type of help for the fledgling industry that have started.
Mm-hmm. And I like your analogy with Communitech, which we have here in Kitchener-Waterloo as a tech hub to help startups. And especially, too, I think this is really important because the technology, especially when it comes to batteries, is changing dramatically. And I think that's really a good focus on what is happening with the battery world. And, if some of these companies, might need to shift direction somewhat if they come across some other new things with the battery technology, and also shift it in terms of supporting their business for the future and everything that's coming forth that way, because the battery technology, when you really think about it, we hear lots of battery breakthroughs, but now I think more than ever we are seeing some of these battery breakthroughs that are happening, and it's going to impact a company quite a bit with something like this. So yeah, I'm interested in seeing how this report helps with the companies, and it's good. They say like 5 major goals to meet by 2035, so it's a good roadmap to check those off as we go along. All right. This one, it really hit me. It didn't surprise me, but I think the number
Yeah.
gas cars. That's the part that was just like, and the best part when I did some research into this as well is just like, okay, who are the five that bought the petrol cars? You know?
Exactly. We've talked on this podcast before about Norway and about its lead in the EV revolution. They, of course, are far out in front of any other country when it comes to EV adoption because of the policies they put in place many years ago, and it's been a wild success. Just in July, EV sales of new cars hit over 92% of all sales. And obviously Norway is not a huge country, but that is an impressive percentage. And they just added the 45 petrol cars were sold in July. That would be the remaining 8% or 7.9%. That adds up to 45 cars. So an overwhelming majority of EVs being sold in the country. And I can see that Norway may push it to 98 or 100% by the end of the year. This train continues to go, and it's very good to see this. Another side note: the country of Ethiopia just mandated that they are required that they import all their vehicles, and you can no longer import a gasoline car into Ethiopia starting now. So EVs are going to be the only things allowed in the country, including diplomats, including anybody from the public, any government office. They all have to be EVs. So there's another country that's taking the reins and steering towards EVs. So hats off to Norway and Ethiopia.
Yeah, one thing that I got over is that of the 45 cars sold, 10 of them were Suzuki Swifts.
Yeah.
But if you look at most of the cars that are the gas cars that are sold, and 2 of them were ambulances, and 6 of them were Porsche 911 variants, basically high performance sports cars, and Mazda MX-5s, basically. So the kind of specialty sort of cars. So
I was surprised about the ambulance, to be honest, because we've been reporting on police, fire, etc., that are switching all over to electric vehicles. In fact, a city in California completely switched their fleet of police cars to Tesla Model Ys. So I was surprised when I saw the ambulances. I'm not sure why that decision was made. The high performance cars, well, I get that. There's definitely a certain group of people that's what they want, and I get that. I didn't know that about Ethiopia. And I also think, Ethiopia, I'd be interested now to know what their renewable energy aspect of things is as well, because if they're importing all these electric cars and then they're like, well,
90% of Ethiopia's electric grid is powered by hydro power.
Yeah.
So they've got a lot of renewable energy. They have zero fuel pumping capability. In fact, they import all their fuel. So, and half of that fuel is currently being allocated to transportation. So this is a way for the country to win in both columns, reducing pollution and cutting the amount of foreign currency they have to use to buy petrol to fuel the cars that are in the country.
Very smart. Awesome to see. Yeah, that's very cool. All right. Well, from Norway to China. Dare I say China, like Trump?
No, don't do that.
No, I'm not going to get into that. Oh man, but no, it's here we go. Like now, China, they're over 50% now outselling gas cars, and again, I know China, the government has put a lot of subsidies into propping up this the whole EV market and everything else, but I mean China has had also that reputation of the coal-fired plants, which they're also converting to renewables, and this is again, I've read also a few interesting articles that some of the main major auto manufacturers that did okay in China are struggling now because the people, like, it's not the same sort of I guess you could say, status for them. It used to be like, oh, I've got X car from North America, etc. Now it's completely reversing and changing around. So the market has definitely gotten interesting there.
Yeah. So, I mean, China is interesting. I think it's for a lot of reasons. Some of it is for somewhat political reasons as well too. But yeah, it used to be that there used to be a big foreign cachet. You know, you own a particular type of car like a BMW or Mercedes that had a huge, and that was a big market for China for a long time, was luxury vehicles and things like that, and importing them. And even like, for example, Buick for a long time was one of the largest brands in Europe, in China.
Yep.
It's one of the reasons why GM didn't kill that brand back in when it went through its bankruptcy in 2008. Was because of the Chinese marketplace and because the Chinese emperor many years ago drove a Buick. But now today, you know, with geopolitical tensions rising and the way the Chinese government controls the media in its country, it has basically sort of pushed a pro-China approach there. So a lot of foreign brands don't have the cachet that they used to, and that they're pushing a lot of the Chinese manufacturers. And of course, the Chinese manufacturers have a head start on a lot of the EV stuff as well too. So a combination of factors that are going on there, plus increases in incentives and things like that, are shifting the landscape in China for how business is happening in the automotive scape. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you know, in one sense, China is the envy of the EV world because, of course, with their government and their policies, they've been able to push a narrative that is one direction. And they've gotten everyone to follow it because you cannot follow what they're putting out there. It's the law. They're saying we're going this way. We're going to power them this way. We're going to bring in different manufacturers that are going to be somewhat subsidized in the beginning in order to get them up and running. They're going to be building vehicles that are going to be EVs, and that's all that's going to happen. And nothing else is going to be subsidized, and we're not giving any incentives to people that are not buying EVs. In fact, we're putting disincentives in their way if they're going to buy a gas vehicle. So all these policies together allows China to be able to keep on the narrow, straight road to EV adoption at a much quicker pace than any other Western country could possibly do because of how the government is reacting here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyways, at the same time, it's going to be interesting, you know, this outselling gas cars, their pollution aspect.
Yep.
How is that also affecting everything? I'm sure it's going to be huge that way, you know, and it'd be interesting besides the cars to get into what about their buses, etc. All those aspects. I'm sure that the pollution aspect is just going to keep going down on this as well.
Well, especially now that they've reached over 50%, you're going to start seeing dramatically less pollution, and that's certainly a plus for anybody on the streets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and you know, speaking of disincentives, that was one of the big things that the Chinese government did a while back, is that if you drive a combustion vehicle in certain urban environments, and they used a license plate system that if your license plate had ended with a certain digit, that you weren't allowed to drive your gas car on certain days. Yep. But that wasn't applicable to EVs, so they were exempt from that.
Similar to Mexico City.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every other day, I think you could drive your car. Yeah. All right. So the ZEV console dashboard, and this gives transparency to EV and charger adoption across Canada. Now, going through this, I found it was interesting. The market penetration of light duty EVs was 11.4% in the Yukon. And that's awesome. It was just great to see. In fact, it's the third highest adopting jurisdiction in Canada, next to, of course, BC and Quebec.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I like this little story overall because it kind of highlights, you know, where EVs are today in Canada, both from not just the sales standpoint, but even from an infrastructure standpoint as well too, kind of showing where you know, where are EVs being sold the most. And you know, no big surprise, it's Quebec and British Columbia. But yeah, to your point, Yukon, that's a little bit of a surprise. But that being said, the Yukon government has invested quite a bit in infrastructure as well too. They have a pretty good DC charging network in the Yukon today. I know one of our members in the WREVA group, Kirk, he has relatives and family up in the Yukon, and he talks about all the EVs he sees. He gets pictures of EVs all the time down there from his family. So it's interesting to see, but it's also interesting to see that right next door to the Yukon, the Northwest Territories is probably one of the worst in Canada. So hopefully the Northwest Territories takes a bit of a page from the Yukon and learns from what they're doing there as well too, and helps enhance some of the stuff, especially after many of the fires that the Northwest Territories saw in the recent season too. So.
Isn't it like 3 chargers in Northwest Territories or something? I read that it's like you're not going to get a lot of tourism with that type of number.
I would say at least electrify the highway going to Yellowknife.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so the Yukon, very much of a dark horse, or should I say white horse?
Yeah, there you go.
There's a bad joke, but I was surprised with the Yukon thing. But of course, leading the road here is BC and Quebec. It will be interesting to see this ZEV transparency next year, because Quebec, of course, is starting to phase out their provincial EV program. Federal is still available to them, but the provincial one will be phased out over time. So it'll be interesting to see if there is any type of a drop there, or has everyone tried to rush to the finish line to get that EV credit in Quebec now, get their car before the end of the year to take full advantage. That could also boost the numbers by the time we reach the end of this year.
Yeah. I think it is very interesting to see what's going to happen for next year. And also, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, what's going to happen with them now as well. Like Eric, you brought up about the wildfires, in Northwest Territories, but of course with Alberta, and even for that matter, BC, what's going on. But it'll be interesting to see what those numbers will be in the middle of Canada.
Yeah, and the story does talk about this, and this was a bit of a surprise as well too, is Alberta actually saw one of the greatest increases in EVs in the last year, going up 59% from March 2023 to March 2024. EV sales increased 59% in the province of Alberta. So that's a promising thing too, in the oil heartland,
Yeah. Well, and they're off coal, like we talked about last podcast. They're finally off coal. So you know what? Maybe there's I don't want to say there's a political shift, but I think there's a mindset shift that perhaps the people are looking at and taking things a different viewpoint and understanding of everything this way too, which is great. So
yeah.
Hopefully there's a political change in Alberta that helps with that in your future.
Yes. We'll see. All right. Now this is also something interesting. I have never heard of this rare mineral. And of course, Saskatchewan is where this is coming from.
Yeah, there was an announcement on the CBC. It was a story. Actually, of course, all our stories have links in the show description. So if you want to go back and see some more details about each of the stories, you can do that at your leisure. But there was a press conference called in Saskatoon, and they were talking about how Canada is investing in this processing of some rare minerals to be used in electric vehicles. And this particular mineral has not been produced or refined anywhere but in China. So this is a new thing to North America to, of course, allow a new supplier that's not connected to China to sell to others that are building these new batteries. And again, this kind of folds back into the stories we've already talked about. This is Canada investing in the infrastructure of the building of and supplying of minerals and EVs themselves. And this is another critical component that until this point was not being able to be purchased in North America. And as of next year, that will change. So hopefully more and more businesses that are suppliers of this type of mineral and other minerals will be able to follow suit. And we can have an alternative supply chain that can be used here in North America to help support Canadians and North Americans.
Mm.
Yeah, I think about a year ago, Mark, we had a story about how there were some investments happening in Saskatchewan about exploring and looking at processing more rare earth elements. And I think this is sort of now part of the fruit of that investment that's coming out now today. Is now, hey, we're actually seeing some good potential here for processing rare earth elements here in Canada. So again, this is all part of the equation of investing in Canada and creating a competitive landscape here so that we can prosper basically in this industry.
Yeah, and not have to sit on the sidelines or just purchase from somebody else. If we can do all these aspects ourselves, it certainly is a win for Canada and its people.
Mm-hmm.
And the neighbors too. This is a win for even the U.S. and other
others that are connected to us by free trade. Absolutely.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I want to see this as a Jeopardy question. I'll take rare minerals for 200. What rare mineral is used to power electric vehicles? That would be bastnasite. Like, how the heck do you say this?
We'll leave it to the experts, Ian.
Yeah. Maybe we'll start a band called bastnasite or just, something like that.
There we go.
Yeah. We have magnets in the band and, use the magnets with our guitars and some fun stuff.
We'll call it M&B, monzonite and bastnasite.
Yeah, bastnasite, yes. Oh, man. All right. This one I came across and I absolutely loved this article. And this is something that I look at that I'm surprised we don't see more and more of this because at Laurier, there's an area there that has EV chargers and full solar panels over top of them. And I'm like, oh, this is awesome. We should be seeing more of this. But I can't say that I do see more of this aspect. And I love that these students got hugely involved with this. And not only is this helping to power their EV cars for the students, but also the excess power is being used on their campus. And it's quite a bit, actually, that they're getting excess power that's happening on this. And I wish, more college campuses would consider doing something like this, because not only is it a great engineering aspect for the students to learn from, but the benefits for the college, university, wherever is huge. And I could see this even like, again, high school. Why is there not a shop class with something like this as well? And of course, with the solar and the chargers, even for the general public, on major highways, like the en routes, for example, why are we not seeing more of those aspects of the solar being integrated within the charging as well, especially when you've got a college that's doing this stuff here. So I just look at this as it's a future for the students, that they know this is where things are going, and now they're part of this and they have a better understanding of it, and it just helps to spread everything.
Yeah, I could. This is, a fantastic learning opportunity for lots of people and lots of students and stuff like that. As you said, high schools, colleges, universities. But on top of that, another application that I kind of just thought of as well too is, there's a lot of people who live in older housing now with even like 100 amp services, and a lot of times they're limited by what size of charger they can put in because of what their service can provide. If you can combine that with a solar installation and stuff like that, you might be able to offset some of the increased demand for something like that as well too. There might be solutions to tie in a solar, maybe even a little bit of a on-site storage with a a level 2 charger as well too, to service those places where you might be service restricted a little bit as well too for capacity. Yep. So
yeah, this is again another step forward for the new generation, looking at ways to make things better. And hats off to these student engineers that have decided that the EV charging along with solar is the way to go. As Ian has mentioned, we're not seeing a lot of solar when it comes to EV charging. Certainly there are some in the Waterloo region area, but we were hoping to see parking lots turn into solar farms, and that just hasn't quite happened. Obviously there's a cost involved, but as proven by some places like the Evolve 1 building, there are benefits to doing it and cutting your electrical bill to nothing in some cases. So I hope more and more of these are come to light, and of course that those white papers can be written up and people can follow their example and their numbers to make it beneficial for all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know what? It's kind of funny when you think about it, but for example, Guelph is an agriculture college, and they should be, getting more onto this as well, because they could integrate their goats into trimming the grass around the solar. Because funny enough, that just came up. I just saw that recently, that all these solar panels, they just released a whole bunch of goats to help trim down the grasses and everything else. So it's really cool to see how this, everything's kind of integrated on that respect.
There's even a number of crops that do really well when there's partial shade through the day. So having solar panels combined with fields that are growing those type of crops is a win for everybody.
Yep. Yeah. So, and it's funny how many people get their self upset about solar farms and all the land that were taken away, but no, not necessarily. I mean, I remember seeing in Nova Scotia, there was a major solar farm put up, and people were up in arms about, you're taking away all this land, but the land wasn't even good for anything other than something like this. But then, like you say, if you have the crops that some of them benefit from this, then there's a win with something like that as well. It's informing the public. It's getting them to understand this type of stuff.
Yeah.
So, all right. So moving on. This is a good one. It's been an interesting year with the superchargers. I know that here in Kitchener, we're still kind of waiting on the on switch for those superchargers at the Sunrise Center. But at the same time, looks like things are kind of coming about. And of course, we had the beginning of this the year with Musk getting rid of, was it 10% of the supercharger team, and then now they're
90% of the supercharger team.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, that's
and then hired back a bunch of them, and
hey, more hot potato.
Yeah, so a lot of chaos in this one. I brought this one to light, but the supercharger network is now one where now multiple manufacturers are starting to have access to it, and some are supposed to get access to it shortly, whatever that means now. I know, myself as a Chevrolet Blazer owner, I'm kind of looking forward to seeing the GM get supercharger access. They keep saying summer, and there's only 4 weeks left of summer. So.
Time's running out, GM. Come on, let's go.
Well, I'm not so sure the holdup is on GM's end. That's the point there. So, big changes at Tesla. I think they need to validate the cars on the network and then make sure the adapters are available, because there's a lot of Rivian and Ford owners that are still waiting for their adapters today.
That's true. Yeah.
And I've been looking at the forums, and General Motors has actually been working with Tesla now to certify not just the Tesla adapter, because Tesla's been one manufacturing the adapter for Ford and Rivian, but now General Motors is working with other third-party companies to also certify for the Tesla network as well. So I know General Motors is taking steps to try to make sure the adapter is available when they have access. But I know that's a part of the piece of the puzzle as well too, and why they're waiting, and it's taking some time for them to get access to the network. But what the story is basically about is that, there's a large number of supercharger sites that have been under construction in Canada in the last year. And for a long time, there was a lot of delays for many reasons, one of which we just talked about. But there are 7 sites that are supposed to open this month, including the first V4 supercharger in Canada, in Kananaskis, Alberta. And then, a couple in Ontario, Orillia and Niagara Falls. And then the story goes on to talk about even a couple that are a lot more local to us as well, too. The one in Kitchener, they're saying is supposed to be open before the end of the year. And there's one in Guelph that's supposed to be open early next year. So,
yep. And 7 of those ones that were going to open this month, 3 of them have opened. So the Niagara Falls one is now opened, and 2 others. So they're starting to move. Hopefully the log jam is freed up. Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's it's been interesting with Tesla, not only with the superchargers, but of course the V4 is a big one. To get that another boost in the power, and of course we're also hearing some rumblings with Tesla with the 4680 cells. Am I saying that right? The dry cell. So there's more stuff been coming out with them about that, and then also. Rumor mill has it about the Model Y Juniper potentially having 800-kilometer range, which again, we'll see what happens. But with these superchargers and all this sort of all coming together, it's just, again, back to that map that we saw with the integration of electric vehicles across Canada and the chargers and that's, again, next year going to be interesting to see where that is at when you include some of those aspects of things into it as well. So, and of course, that being said, in my lovely radio voice, this weekend we present Basnasite at Kananaskis. What?
Live in concert.
This whole podcast we've been dealing with like more English language that I don't recognize.
Exactly. Gobbledygook, isn't it? Yes. Yes, indeed.
Oh, yeah.
All the words have been used. Now we're just making stuff up.
Yeah, exactly. So there's our show tonight. Some interesting articles that we've had come up on all this stuff.
Exactly. And if you haven't already, please give us a thumbs up on the video. We would appreciate that. Press that subscribe so you'll be notified every time that we load a new video. And we want to thank you, of course, for watching this evening or whenever you've watched it. Any shout outs from you, Ian, for tonight?
Well, I noticed you're wearing the Cybertruck shirt as well.
You got the memo, obviously. Okay.
Yes, I will not give a shout out for the finally released orders for Canada. I'm sorry, like I wanted to buy 2, but not at 140 grand plus. Oh my God.
You got a spare 300K laying around?
Well, I'll just remortgage the house, and at that point I might as well live out of the Cybertruck and everything.
There you go.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, a Silverado EV 4WT is about half that cost. So
yeah, I know. It's just like, come on, you guys. Like, but it's selling. It's not like it's not selling. But I also looked at the exchange rate with our Canadian dollar, and it's not good.
Yeah,
that is no tacos for Tesla on that one for Canada. Okay.
a zero taco scale. Okay.
Yes.
Very good. Eric, any shout outs?
So I got a little bonus story I'm going to throw out there. And this is going to be a little bit of a fun one. But, speaking of Doug Ford, so apparently they put out a call for green energy, and they've changed direction now, and they're looking at possibly doing a whole bunch of wind contracts again. So,
oh my gosh.
So after canceling a whole bunch of them 6 years ago, now they're like, oh, wait a minute, wind might be good, Hey,
over
who'd have thunk
contracts.
it?
Yep, 750 contracts, and they ripped out wind turbines that were 90% plus done.
Yep.
Man. What's old is new again. Yeah.
And like I said, it drives me crazy when politicians don't listen to science, and look at the science of things. It becomes politics.
Politics.
Hot potato.
Yeah, exactly.
Cold tacos.
And in the background, some people might have heard my cat. She's been pretty needy since I've been out.
Yeah, that cat.
Your cat knew you were on vacation for way too long.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
Working again.
Yeah.
I'm gonna meow through his whole podcast and ruin it because he's working again.
Yeah, pretty much not paying attention to her. So.
Well, thanks again, everyone, for joining us. We will see you again next month. Of course, join us for EVs and ice cream at the end of this month. Actually, it's coming up this weekend on Sunday. So it's every last Sunday of the month. So we'll be doing it again. I'm going to send it out in email. So if you're on the email list, you'll get it. If you're not on the email list, send us an email asking to be added to the list, and we'll get you there. So with that, good night, everyone. Thanks for joining us.